My name is Lauren Webster. I work for the Wellcome Centre of Anti-Infective Research, and I will be your host for the evening. Sounds quite cool, actually. So before we begin today, I would like our guests to introduce themselves. So if we start off with James, just because you are the first person I'm seeing on my screen, if you would like to introduce yourself.
No problem at all, and thanks for the invitation to join this conversation series. So for those of you, and probably there's some familiar faces out there, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm a Director of Drug Discovery at Medicines for Malaria Venture. I've been there for 7 or 8 years now. I lose track a little bit, and I work within the discovery team, which is basically everything from sort of target identification, high throughput screening, lead optimization, all the way through to sort of preclinical candidates. My background is medicinal chemistry, and I guess in part one of the reasons why I've been invited tonight is that I have particular interest working with our teams based in Africa, and actually had the opportunity to spend a year in Cape Town a couple of years ago working at UCT, and I've tried to build links between MMV and a lot of African partners and researchers starting out in drug discovery.
Cool, thanks very much for that. And Ian, I was going to say a common guest in conversation with. Would you like to introduce yourself to this audience?
So me and Gilbert, I too am a chemist by training. So I did a degree in chemistry and become a medicinal chemist. I moved to Dundee in 2005 and to help start the drug discovery unit here. And I'm part of the Wellcome Centre for Anti-Infectives Research. So I'm head of chemistry in the drug discovery unit, and I've got a great interest in developing drugs, and particularly for neglected infectious diseases such as malaria, which is where we have a good relationship with James, and a number of other diseases.
Cool, thank you very much. So, as I say, for the audience, you might have guessed that we have 2 drug discovery experts with us tonight. And what we're going to be focusing in on is the challenges and opportunities that are available in drug discovery, not just from the developed world, but also from low and middle income countries. But before we begin, so thanks James, thanks Ian for your introduction. We would like the audience to start to participate in the session as well. So we have a couple of questions for you that are available with using your mobile phone. So on your screen just now, you will see there is a slide appearing that has Mentimeter on it. So there is a code at the top, which is menti.com. So if you're to type that into your mobile phones, and there's a code that you can type in to gain access to the room. So this is just for us to be able to understand who are we speaking to, and also as well for you to have the opportunity to ask James and Ian anything you would like about tonight's topic. So, as mentioned, if you're typing in menti.com and you use the code 79403136, you can use this on your desktop, you can use this on your mobile phone, and it's just for us to ask you a few questions to get you involved in the discussion. So the first question we have is, are you actively working in drug discovery? So tonight's topic is focusing in on drug discovery in particular, but also the challenges and opportunities faced in such a discipline. So if you'd like to just give that, just so we can feel for who are we speaking to. So a couple of people want to, some people yes, and say that's good. Don't worry, you are allowed to say no, that's also okay if you're just here just listening to Ian and James's chat. So, James, how long did you say you've been working in drug discovery for?
So prior to MMV, I was at an organisation in Cambridge in the UK called Biofocus, that's now part of Charles River, and I was there for about 15 years. So 15 years plus another sort of 7-8 years at MMV. So a little bit over 20 years I've been working in drug discovery.
Wow, I was going to say It's a mighty feat, that one.
Oh, there's plenty of people who've been doing it a lot longer than me. I can assure you.
Now, Ian, can you top this? Can you top this from James?
Yes, I can. I think
Oh.
I started really doing drug discovery when I moved to Cardiff in 1994, and I started a medicinal chemistry group working on things like malaria, African sleeping sickness, and leishmaniasis. So I had a group that I started in Cardiff at the university there.
Oh, cool. See, I was going to say wealth of knowledge in this. Not from me, but I was going to say from the pair of you. So I was going to say, it looks like most of our audience are trying to get into the area of drug discovery, as in they want to, or that they are actively working in drug discovery. So that's nice to see. So, guys, what we will do is we'll move on to our next question. So the next question is a word cloud. And in this, you can type in to address to the question, what are your biggest challenges that you are facing in your drug discovery or your research? So for some of the audience that have commented already, you've already said that you are working in drug discovery. So what are the biggest challenges that you face? You don't have to say about your institution, that's okay, but yourself, what's happening there? So that's what, with your answers that you'll provide, this is what we'll use to fuel our conversation, to steer everything into how you want to get out of the session. So while we've got some people populating, I'd say James and Ian, I'll just start asking you just a few questions to get the mood set, if it were. So as both of you, a massive wealth of knowledge coming from the drug discovery background. So what would you say as starting out? What would you say is something that is the most essential piece of information that a newly come researcher into the area should know? And this one, it can be, as I say, Ian's made a noise, so I'm going to go with Ian on this one.
Right.
Ian, I'd say you begin on this one.
I mean, in terms of starting out in drug discovery, I think the most important thing is to have the training and knowledge of what the drug discovery process is, what you need to put in place in terms of the collaborations and the infrastructure that you need to put in place. So I think that would be the most important thing, to get training and understanding of what the process is, what you have to do at the various stages. And I think having people as collaborators or part of your team that have had experience in doing drug discovery and taking projects from the start through to a later stage is really important.
Cool. I was going to say, James, do you want to elaborate any more on that? I mean, we've got some lovely answers coming through from our audience as well.
Ian makes a really good point, but I think I would probably even almost go a step before that. I mean, I think what you really do need is the enthusiasm to be doing drug discovery, because your question is, what are the biggest challenges, and there's some people put some really good answers down already, and you could probably think of many more, and there are lots of challenges. There are challenges we think of, and there are challenges we don't even think of. They're going to be challenges, and enthusiasm to actually try and overcome that, and try and if you like, get the training and the learning and the development that Ian was talking about, really is where you have to start. I mean, in some environments, perhaps you've already got a big sort of training system all in place. Even if you go off and start working in a pharmaceutical organization, perhaps there's a big infrastructure and support network that's going to really allow help you to develop and really be giving you a guidance through that. I think from outside of that, perhaps more controlled environment, is really going down to the researcher to actually build those bridges, to learn the skills that they haven't got, to collaborate with the people who have skills that they don't have, and that kind of, as I say, for me, it's really enthusiasm and a passion to be in that. I mean, fortunately, I think a lot of researchers have that, and I think that's a lot of reasons why we get into science, but that's what I think you really need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true. I mean, I think drug discovery is a really exciting field to be in, but like all things, it's hard work, and it's a long road to get from the start of a process through to a compound that goes into clinical trials. anywhere, and you know that's really challenging. So you have to have the energy and enthusiasm to do that. But I think it's it's an incredibly worthwhile activity.
Yeah, no, good. I was going to say, yeah, agree obviously with both of you as well. Especially as well with so many projects failing in drug discovery for one reason or another, usually due to the science output that happens from it. You need to have enthusiasm to keep going with the one that is going to succeed. So yeah, no. So thank you, audience, for responding to that. It's great. These are some of the things that we will be addressing in the following 30 or so minutes. So moving on to the next, so this is the final question. The audience will be delighted for, at least for now. So what do you feel you need support in? So based around, you've said about the challenges that you are currently faced, but what do you feel that you need support? So Ian mentioned, which was something really good, that saying, you know, before starting out in drug discovery, you know, an essential thing is to have adequate training, as in to know, you know, what are you about to face, because, you know, drug discovery takes in so many different disciplines, it encompasses so many people. And, you know, James, for instance, you know, you said you're a chemist. You don't just speak to chemists. Who all do you speak to? So when it's coming to just a project, let's say, who all are you communicating with?
Well, I guess, that's, you know, it's a good point. I mean, really, in terms of drug discovery, you know, as you say, chemistry is, you know, a pillar, the biology, and that biology, it could be in vitro, it could be in vivo, the pharmacology, the drug metabolism, the safety. So, you know, if you're, you know, you've got to have an idea really of what your sort of clinical, you know, what your clinicians are thinking, because ultimately, you know, they are the ones that will be hopefully you know, using the drugs that you develop, and so you want the drug that you develop to be something that's going to be used, and to get to there you need to be thinking about regulatory. So I mean, there's a whole team that you would have to be, you know, thinking about and conversing with, and you know, you've got to have a brain a lot bigger than mine to be able to hold all that knowledge in one place. So you're going to have to do that through collaboration and through listening and through talking and through taking other people's opinions and other people's expertise. So, you know, so it's a really big team that's involved in the whole process.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think, you know, there's a tendency to try and do everything by oneself, but I don't think, you know, with drug discovery in particular, it's, you know, we can't do everything by ourselves. We can't know everything. There's so many things to know. And one of the things I really enjoy about drug discovery is the fact that we're interacting with so many different people from different disciplines and different backgrounds and different countries. And I think that's been really exciting. And you know, I've learned such a lot from other people. And it's great fun working with a big team of people.
And I think one of the things, you know, to go back to, you know, when you're talking about, you know, we're talking about training and enthusiasm and the passion for doing it. I suppose that has to be balanced out with actually having the realistic ambitions for what you can actually achieve yourself and what you're going to need other people's support with. And this is really the question that you've got there. And that is sort of the flip side of having the ambition. You want to find this new medicine that's going to save millions of lives. Yeah, that's really what you're getting out of bed to do. But you've actually got to temper that with what can I actually achieve? What's my expertise? What am I going to contribute? And that's one of those really sort of you know, especially when you see sort of proposals and things like that, where people have set ambitious goals, but it's balancing with what can actually be done and making that realistic. So it's sort of both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I guess we're always trying to improve, but to know our limitations. Like, you know, for instance, Ian, you're not going to go into a DMPK suite and start working with category 3 pathogens with the mice. You're just not going to do that. That's not your level of expertise. I'm sure you'd love to give it a go, Ian, but
I'm sure they'd let me in.
So guys, this is good for what you've commented on as well. Funding, expertise, training, infrastructure. I mean, that's great. As I would say, all will be highlighted in the following session. So I'm going to leave this slide, but this will be on your phones. It will not be appearing on your desktop or tablet, whatever you've logged in for. This is something for you guys to be able to ask us, so James and Ian, any questions that you would like addressed. So I'll leave this on the screen, but I will stop sharing it, so it means that you guys can all keep those questions coming, all the pressing things that you'd like to have asked. So continuing on with, while the audience get their phones going again to type in some more questions. So for you both, I was going to say, so thinking of the developed world first of all, so the Western world, it's working in drug discovery. You know, James, you come from a charity. Ian, yes, you're from a charity as well, but you're in an academic setting as well. So from an academic setting in this world, so for Ian, what would you say are some of the challenges that you face, your group faces?
I mean, I think the challenges is drug discovery is a complicated area. It's there's a lot of things that you need to put in place, and it's not easy to find drugs for any disease. So I think, you know, you as you said at the beginning, most drug discovery projects end up getting stopped somewhere along the line. Very few make it into patients in clinical trials, and even fewer to the end. But I think you need to sort of see drug discovery as a series of steps. So it's developing a biology assay and getting that working, developing the chemistry so that you can make compounds and improve the compounds that interact against the biology, working with the pharmacologists who can then assess how drug-like the compounds are. So there's different stages, and I think it's just focusing on each stage. And I think also there's so much knowledge coming along. It's important to try and stay at the forefront of that knowledge to make sure that we're using the best techniques and methods in the drug discovery that we're doing, so that we can be as efficient as possible.
Mm. And James, I was going to say, so you come from a sort of different background, whereas, you know, there's a base where Ian's group is located, but with you, you're more of a collaborator, and you don't have necessarily a base. You have quite a few. I was going to say, what's it called? The hand in the cookie jar you've got.
I think that's it says as a hub, I suppose. But
So what would you say from your perspective? You know, MMV are established, they are working in drug discovery, but what would you say are their challenges?
Well, I suspect that obviously we're finding the new drugs is incredibly challenging. I suppose the challenge for MMV, in the sense that all of our work, everything that MMV has achieved has been in collaboration. So there's nothing we've done just running by ourselves. And I suppose really what the challenge we've had to deal with is actually trying to bring together, if you like, what are the objectives? What are the big challenges? You know, what are the criteria that we want to lay down for what are in our space malaria? What should a new malaria drug candidate look like? What are the assays that need to be carried out? What is an acceptable dose? What is an acceptable safety profile? To actually give that consensus opinion, that's been a real challenge for MMV, and to try and give some guidance so that there is, you know, and hopefully we're not arrogant enough to say that there's only one way of doing things and that's what we say, but hopefully we are giving a position that people can actually refer to and use that to guide where they're going with their drug discovery, because that's always the challenge. Is you know, as they always say, you have to have the end in mind when you start on the journey. Where do you want to get to? If you want to just sort of simply, you know, play around with some molecules and see what their biological activity is and see where it takes you, that might be great and that might be a fulfilling career for someone, but you know, it's going to be serendipity that you actually find a drug rather than actually, you know, that clear path that you've got, whether that is, as I say, the assay that you need to have, the data package you need to have, you know, and pulling that all together. And that can be just as important for people who aren't familiar with the area, you know, as it could be for when we're working with a pharmaceutical company. You might think that, I don't know, $20 a dose is an acceptable price for a medicine. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can consider that, and they could be experts in the field. So that I think has been a real challenge for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been really important, and we've obviously done a lot of work with MMV and those sort of guidelines as to the different stages of the drug discovery process that I was talking about. So finding a hit in an enzyme assay or against a pathogen, and then saying, well, this is a valid hit, and then taking it into developing the compounds to a stage where you've got definite activity. You can see some activity in say a mouse model of malaria. And knowing what your compound needs to be able to do at each stage, I mean, that's really valuable. And it's great what MMV's done in other disease areas where we've been working, and we've had to sort of start to try and develop that knowledge ourselves, because it's not been known, or talking to other people working in the area and trying between us to come to a consensus as to what the molecules need to be able to do at different stages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So for both of you, you both mentioned an aspect of where, like, for instance, James, you were saying, we say, like, there's a way to particularly do it, as in how MMV do it. Ian, you're saying that, yes, there's a way, but also as well, when you don't know what to do, you have to develop that knowledge. So how do you ensure that there's development of knowledge of your members of staff, or keeping up with the latest research? You talked as well about innovative techniques towards current diseases. So how do you keep up with that?
That's a very good question, and it's difficult to keep up with everything. And I think training is a really important thing. So we have training for people within the drug discovery unit. We have lots of interactions with other people in other institutions, and we talk to them about what the drug discovery pathway is, how and learn from each other around how to tackle different diseases. And then there's also a lot of reading scientific literature to understand what other people are doing. Obviously going to conferences, which hopefully we'll be able to have some face-to-face conferences again soon. And I think these are all things that are important. And as James said, also, knowing all the way through to the clinicians, what do the clinicians and public health people see as needs, and what ultimately do they need to treat people who have diseases, wherever that is.
Yeah. And so, for instance, coming from both ends, so for James, you were saying teaching people, Ian, you're saying, we have a wealth of knowledge in-house, and if not, we go and seek it as well. So how did MMV meet CAIR, or meet the Drug Discovery Unit, which is what it was before the Wellcome Centre? So how did you both meet? Because that leads on to what the audience were asking for, saying they find difficult is the collaborations, so to find them. So how did you both find each other? Sounds like a really nice story. A love story, but let's hear that one.
Yeah, I mean, actually, we first started an interaction with MMV, I think it was in 2008, 2009, when we conducted a small screen with one of our compound libraries against the parasite which causes malaria. This was before your time, James. Mm-hmm. And then we got some compounds that were active against the malaria parasite, and then we worked with MMV to take some of those hits, or the chemical start points, and develop them forwards, and that ultimately led to a compound that we developed as a preclinical candidate for malaria, which has subsequently been taken on by what was MMV, and then the German pharmaceutical company Merck has now taken that on into clinical trials, so which is really exciting.
Cool. So I was going to say, for both of you, let's start off with James on this one. So working in low and middle income countries, what would you say is the difficulty in getting the collaborators? So like you both have met because Dundee had the ability to screen in the parasite. There was a set of compounds, and that's how the collaboration started. But what would you say are some of the difficulties in a low middle income country setting?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's a really good question, because that model of okay, we'll run a screen, we'll get some hit compounds, and we'll take them to a certain we'll develop them to a certain level, and then we'll start looking for collaborators in the compound is something that requires a significant amount of infrastructure and capability and funding just to get to that point. And that is where I guess we have to look earlier in the screening, sort of if you look earlier in the drug discovery pipeline, to actually be able to think about when we can start collaborating. So for people in situation, working environments where they've got maybe it is at an earlier stage, it could be a biological assay, it could be a natural product extract, it could just be some capability in some area of chemistry or something like that. And it's really looking at those seeds. Where have you got some expertise that you can actually look at, thinking, okay, I've got a compound, but I need to test it in some assays. Can I find some collaborators that are working in the field? And I guess this is a little bit about what Ian was saying. So whether it's other collaborators within your institute, whether it's other collaborators within your region, or whether it's international collaborators, it is tricky, and it does involve if you like, the sort of scientific equivalent of cold calling, that you just have to, whether it's that meeting someone at a conference and say, I really like your talk, it's a great assay, would you test them on my compounds, or whether it's just contacting them by email or by phone, whatever it's going to be. That's, I mean, it goes right back to the beginning. We're talking about enthusiasm. There's got to be a certain level of enthusiasm and belief in what you've got, that you can actually find these collaborators. And obviously then, there's people who perhaps have a wider network, like MMV, like Ian and your institute, who can actually do a bit of the matchmaking. Might not be able to fund a project, might not be actually, if someone comes to me with a project, to do with, Chagas or Leishmaniasis or something that is outside of the direct malaria, we're not going, that's not something that we've got the mandate to follow up on. But we know people who are working in that area and can start to build bridges. And so I think it's really, just drop people an email, it sounds easy, and it's not easy. So I don't want to trivialize it, but I think you just have to start making those contacts, and some won't even respond, but someone will.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do everything. I mean, that's clear. I mean, nobody can do everything, and we have to work with other people, and that's one of the exciting things about drug discovery, is the interactions with other people. And sometimes you need to go and look, as James said, you need to look for other people within your own institution or other institutions within your country. We've had experience in we're working with different lots of expertise, sometimes different institutes, and trying to getting to know that they exist, so that they can build those interactions and collaborations, and it's finding the people that are the right partners, a complementary skill set, and that you can get on with as people as well, actually, is really important as well.
Yeah, you probably have to like who you're working with as well to make it succeed.
It is important. You have to build a trust between people when you're working in collaboration.
Yeah. So I think this actually goes on to one of the audience's questions. So leading on from that, so one of the audiences asked, is there any advice on how to make smaller projects with limited resource have an actual impact on drug discovery? So I guess that's about, you've got a particular niche area that you can work in, or doing a particular experiment. So just looking for advice on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think with drug discovery, particularly when you're starting out, you just can't start out with saying we've got everything in place and it's a big bang and we're going to go all the way through. It's starting where you have your expertise and strengths, and finding somebody who can collaborate or partner. So, for example, if you had, as James said, some nice chemistry and the start point, can you find somebody who can you can collaborate with to screen your compound against parasites or against an enzyme or whatever you're looking at? Or if you're a biologist and you've got some interesting screen, can you find some chemists that would work with you? And so I think it's finding those partnerships and developing. And I think once you start to make progress and get results, then it becomes much more easier to go to funding agencies and say, well, we've worked together with person X in Institute Y, and we've made this progress. And I think by building from around a project from something small that you're good at and building out is a good way to start.
Mm-hmm. James, do you have anything to comment on that as well?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Ian. I mean, I think that the demonstrating success, even if it's very early success, is really powerful. It's powerful for attracting in collaborators because because you can, if you have some results and you've published the results, that's a great a great sort of advert for what you've done. It can often be a way to start presenting the results, in meetings and things like that, which again sort of showcases what you can do and sort of advertises your availability for collaboration. So, obviously, again, it's as ever, and I apologise to the audience. It's easier. It's easy for me to say, well, publish your results, but you've got to have the right results and you've got to have the right story, and you've got to and it does involve work to do that. But that I think is a very much what I would call a realistic goal. As Ian was saying, if you've got a biological assay that you've developed, against a certain enzyme target or a pathogen or a parasite, and you can publish that. Well, that then lets people know that you could possibly screen compounds and have a wider collaboration. Again, if you develop some chemistry, even if it's making some analogues of something that's in the literature or something like that, that can be showcased. And I think it's these sorts of little, initial steps. And that's what then builds into the grant proposals and getting the collaborations that I guess really allow teams to then move into a full sort of project team collaborative drug discovery effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I was going to say the audience is also asked again, which again I think leads very well into this too. So we have a question that's asking, what would you advise a scientist in Africa to focus more on, since we can't do everything? What aspect of the drug discovery pipeline are we most likely to succeed in as Africans?
Well,
that's a tough one. That one.
That's a tough question. I think it comes back to it's where your expertise is. So if you've got some an assay, it's developing that assay, whether it's an enzyme assay or an assay against a parasite or a bacteria, and then to find people that you can collaborate with, or if you're a chemistry group and you've got some nice chemistry that you think might have a activity, can you find somebody that will screen your compounds against the parasite or whatever? So I think it's really starting with what your expertise is and generating some data.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess the one thing I would add to that would be that there is a wealth of literature around what are the kind of parameters that would be used to characterize a robust and reproducible assay. There's a lot of literature out there about what are considered, the sort of if you like, the physicochemical properties of molecules that are suitable for drug discovery projects, that allow you to the areas that you can work on to actually have them grounded in good solid science, so that these are sorts of things that really would help early stage projects, and I think that information is out there.
Mm.
Yeah,
it's like Sorry, Ian, on you go.
And I was going to say, I mean, and it's not being afraid to go and ask people for help and advice. I mean, you know, we all in drug discovery ask people for help and advice. We have for our drug discovery programs, we have scientific advisory boards that give us advice on what we're doing, and you know, we're doing the right thing. Are there things that we should be doing that we're not? And you know, so I think it's not being afraid to ask for advice and help, and there are people out there who will give it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for the scientists, you know, don't stretch yourself too thin.
Yeah.
Not almost like stick with what you know, but be aware of also what's out there and how to seek for it. Cool. So we've also got another nice question too as well. So how are people like CAIR and MMV working on the infrastructure challenges in the low and middle income countries? So I was going to say, James, let's start off with you, because you were like, I'm going to get that one in there first.
Oh, no. That's. I mean, it's a difficult question, because you know, infrastructure funding is you know is a massive topic, and you know, and it's, to be honest, well beyond the scope of you know, the, relatively speaking, limited budget of something like MMV, and beyond our mandate, which is around, you know, this is not particularly a defence of MMV. I think that what, you know, funders can often do, unless they're specifically, you know, mandated to fund infrastructure development, is to enable quality scientific projects and to help develop that. And that really is the sort of the way that attracts funding, attracts research, attracts investment into institutes, is by having a strong track record of good projects, good training of students. You know, it's unlikely that, you know, that in many places, you know, people are going to come along and suddenly build a new laboratory and things like that. It's a kind of stepwise process, and it's finding partners to work with on that. So it's a long process, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it's something that obviously funders are keen to do, but they don't necessarily have the resources to be able to, you know, to do that, and at least not in isolation, without sort of the actual institute and without regional funding, without, you know, sort of, you know, so it's a big question.
Mm-hmm. Ian, I was going to say, I mean,
well, I think you're, yeah. So I mean, within the Wellcome Centre for Anti-Infectives Research, I mean, we've been very fortunate that Wellcome has given us some funding that we've been able to use to help do training, and I think training is a very good start point. So and obviously, Lauren, you're one of the people involved in the training, but so you know the answer to this better than I do. But I mean, I think, you know, we've developed a number of training aspects. I mean, initially we started out with having people come from various disease endemic countries to come and spend some time in our labs, so they get embedded in a drug discovery project. They get to go to the meetings and they learn skills, whether it's in chemistry or biology or pharmacology. And also importantly, learn by sitting in some of the project meetings, get to see, you know, how the decision-making processes occur. And we've had people, and I'm sure you can talk with a number of people from various parts of Africa and from Brazil. We've also had courses that we've given, and we've had a course that was given in South Africa a couple of years ago. We had a number of courses planned that unfortunately got disrupted by COVID. And then obviously you, Lauren, have developed quite a lot of online material, which is really useful. And we've done a few specific courses for people. So, for example, we've just finished for one group doing a course in how to run and maintain an LCMS, a liquid chromatography mass spectrometer. And then you've developed some various training tools, and I think that's been really good. And the other way I think we are trying to is to partner on some projects with people and to have joint projects where it's a truly collaborative project going forward. And I think, you know, that benefits, you know, both parties. And I think that's a good way to help you know, get things going.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to say it comes down to knowledge and being able to feed people or to share people, the wealth of knowledge from the MMV as well as CAIR, but also as well to, as James had mentioned again, if you don't ask, you don't get. So, asking to collaborate, you have this interesting piece of research, you need to move it forward, you need help to move it forward. So for our audience, don't be scared to ask for help. The worst answer you can get is no, but the best answer you can get is yes. So you'll never know.
Giving a sort of a slight advert for sort of an MNV initiative, we certainly have funding projects for Africa. We have an African call for proposals that will be, some point around about June in the year. But we also have open, if you like, open access, open source projects, which we have a project called Malaria Leap that actually is led by some of our collaborators in led by a staff member based in India. And those projects are open for anyone to join. And there's a number of these in neglected and tropical disease drug discovery. And here it's really people turning up to the meetings and having ideas. And if they can contribute chemistry or biology, that's even better. So there are opportunities where people can get involved in drug discovery projects, even if all they've got is some ideas in their head. They can see the data, they can share their ideas, they can, ideally they'll contribute biology or chemistry or DMPK or some other kind of actual lab-based science, but they're there for everyone to be involved in, and that's the idea, and that's the ambition of these projects. So there are opportunities for people to get involved in drug discovery without having a sort of, if you like, a formal project.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that as well, James, so MMV have their open source network, and then DNDI as well, they also have their open source network that they encourage institutions, so not companies, but academic institutions to engage in, and they can be shared this information as well. And I have to say, I've had quite a few trainees from the low middle income countries work with these projects, and it's nice because they're working with 15 other institutes on a project, so they get to see all the other data that's been generated that if you were working on your own in a project, you would probably never be exposed to any of that data, or at least as quickly.
It's not a simple fix, because obviously, because these projects are kind of voluntary, and so you haven't got the funding. So it is a chicken and egg. If you haven't got the funding for the student, how can the student work on the project? But they are there if students have funding and have projects, or if drug discovery people are interested in actually seeing projects with maybe wider network. It's it's another way of building the collaboration and that network.
So for both of you, I am aware of the time and that we are coming shortly to a close. So I would like to ask one more question from you all. Actually, there's actually two more questions that I'll ask that's come from the audience. So Ian, you were mentioning about the malaria clinical candidate, and somebody has asked how long before they can buy it.
I don't know. It's still some way off in the clinical trials process. It is very actually James could probably comment more in detail on that. I mean, and even when you get a compound into the clinic, it is no guarantee into clinical trials. There's no guarantee it will get through to the end. So it's still undergoing all the testing to make sure that it is appropriate, and that is not a quick process. It's many years to take compounds through clinical trials. Obviously, we're really excited, but until it gets to the end,
Yeah, safety's a big one, that one.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've got another question as well. Sorry. It's been hard for companies interested in the kinetoplastid disease area to raise funding for their programs. Any suggestions on where should companies look for this?
I mean, I think there are various sources of funding, and there's various charities and government funding institutions that will fund research in this area. Obviously, it's competitive. I think one of the things that has changed a lot over the last, say, 20 years is that a lot of funding agencies are now really understand a lot more about the drug discovery process, whether that's government or charitable funding. And I think that's been a big change where funding agencies appreciate, that it is difficult, that it does cost quite a lot of money, that projects don't always succeed. So I think but the funding agencies have been very good in developing funding streams that would allow people to do this research, usually sort of very much milestone driven.
Mm-hmm. James, do you have anything to add for that one?
Not really within the, within the kinetoplastic field.
Yeah. But remember, you can always ask James, and he will point you to somebody who will know. See, that's the whole.
I'll give Ian a call.
I'll give Ian a call. Ian is here. Fantastic, Ian. No, that's good. And so, a finisher as well. What advice would you give to our audience? So one piece of information that, everything that we've discussed tonight as well. What one thing would you want them to take home with them? Well, they are sitting at home, but you know what I mean.
I think doing drug discovery is really worthwhile. It's really exciting and interesting, and I think it's got a lot of potential to help address whether this kind of standard phrase, unmet medical need, but there are many diseases for which we don't have good drug treatments. So I think there's a lot of work to do, but I think it's a very rewarding area to go into, and lots to learn, lots of interesting interactions, and hopefully at the end of the day we will get compounds out to patients.
Mm-hmm. And James?
Yeah, I think it's the word that's come up a lot in this discussion. It's that willingness and desire to collaborate. I think that as we've said, that the process is long, it's convoluted, it has many components to it, and really by building those networks and those collaborations, the way that you can actually make an impact on that. But I totally agree with Ian. I think it's an amazing privilege to be able to work on some of these things. We'd rather we didn't have to, but there's I've founded an incredible career, and I'm very lucky to work with some amazing scientists, and continue to. So it's really it's a great thing to do. It's a great job.
It's good fun. It's good fun. No, well, for both of you, thank you very much for taking part. Just before we go off, I wanted to let the audience know about our next In Conversation With, which is where we have a scientist from Exsensia, which is a spin-out company actually from the University of Dundee. You might have heard them quite a lot in the news. So we have Jeremy Bessner talking about AI, artificial intelligence in drug discovery, so that should be quite exciting. But for tonight, I was going to say, Ian, James, thank you very much for giving up your time tonight to help share your experiences and as well offer some advice to our audience. And as always, thank you to WCAIR for sponsoring the event, and to everybody behind the scenes who made this event possible. So thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice evening, everyone. Okay,
thank
bye.
you.
Bye.